sometimes having the office could be a distraction too, where you constantly have people coming in and you don't get enough time to work. This way, you can meet remotely and you get the work and you can focus on getting things done. So I think even the delivery of the legal service is ripe for disruption.
Okay, Suresh, thank you for joining us in the BoomX podcast. We're here with a new set and a new system. It took us a while to get set it up, but thank you for joining us and thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much, Barry, for having me and for inviting me. I'm really thrilled to be part of this, and I look forward to speaking to you.
Yeah. So, we've had a few lawyers come join us on the show, all in different capacities. Some of them have been part of the legal tech movement. Some of them are, service startups, and some of them themselves, have entrepreneurial visions. And you seem to encapsulate all these kind of these realms. We got connected on LinkedIn pretty recently, though. We've known each other for a while, at least in name. But so I wanted to really have you on because you're well accomplished. You have quite a few degrees behind you. You're very knowledgeable, and you're involved in a bunch of different startup initiatives. So could we start with an introduction about what you do?
Okay, thank you. So my name is Suresh. I'm a startup lawyer. I recently got my license and I wanted to start on my own and started Suresh Law Professional Corporation. But my background, as you were pointing out, is more on the technology and business side and in the startup world. At the moment, I'm focusing on the law practice, which is the Suresh Law, and I'm also involved in other entrepreneurial capacities. I'm the COO at a company called CSI. I'm the executive director of Mosaic Lab, which is an incubator for technology startups, primarily in Scarborough and surrounding areas. And Mosaic Ventures is the investment arm. And then in addition to that, I'm also, while doing the law practice, I'm focusing on startups and helping the startups given my background. And I'm also looking at gaps in the legal industry in terms of where technology can be leveraged, so providing legal tech solutions. But I'm really just studying, identifying different gaps to see what tools could be beneficial to lawyers and also what platforms or tools could be beneficial directly to the consumers. But, I'm not going to rush into that. I'm going to take my time to figure things out in that space. But so I'm really thrilled to be in this interesting mix of, I'm new to the practice of law, but I'm not new to technology and entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
So I continue to exist in that space, and so I'm very thrilled to have this additional tool in my toolkit to provide legal services for the startups that I have already been working with for over a decade now. So I'm really excited to be in this new space. So that's kind of in a nutshell the different hats that I wear in addition to being a father and husband at home.
Of course. So let's decompress that. So you I believe did an undergraduate in electrical engineering.
Yes. So in terms of degree, sorry, I skipped that part.
Yeah.
I did an electrical engineering degree at Waterloo, and then I did a Bachelor of Arts at Waterloo as well. Then I did an MBA in strategy at Wilfrid Laurier. Then I did my law degree. I did my first year at the University of Ottawa. Then I transferred to Osgoode Hall Law School and completed my law degree at Osgoode Hall.
Yeah, I mean that's quite a list of accomplishments. Most people are lucky to get 1-2 degrees out of their careers. You have 4 at various institutions. What led you down that path to pursue those education?
I think just life takes you in different paths, right? To be honest, I never planned on becoming a lawyer. I never planned on having 4 degrees. I did always want to be an engineer from my childhood days, as many Tamil parents kind of tell you, you're going to be an engineer or a doctor. So that was kind of the story of my life. My uncle was an engineer, so I was going to be an engineer.
Yeah.
So that's just since childhood. But going to Waterloo was a dream that came into my mind at a young age. At the age of 13, I moved from Montreal, where my family lived, to live with some family friends in Toronto to increase my chance of going to the University of Waterloo. So I had that dream, and that was the vision. I wanted to be an engineer. Eventually, I wanted to do an MBA. So that was really the plan. Then life takes you in different paths, as most people would be aware. I had some challenges in my life. So those challenges led me to kind of reevaluate what, those experiences led me to reevaluate what I wanted to do. So dealing with lawyers and working with lawyers, and I learned to appreciate the impact, the positive impact it can have on people to help people out. So that's how I became interested in law. It took me some time to get the confidence and to realize whether this is the right path for me to switch into. So I just went through that process, and I didn't jump on it right away because I was hesitant initially, thinking, how could a lawyer become a lawyer? How come an engineer become a lawyer? Do I even have the skills? Can I do it? So I wasn't confident, but eventually I overcame that and just went for that. And one thing I do is that once I take time to make my decisions, but once I make a decision, then I just stick to the plan and I just work towards it. So a lot of hardships, a lot of sacrifices, but I didn't turn back. I just get things done. That's it. So
yeah, I mean,
here I am.
Absolutely. Like definitely it takes a lot of determination and focus, to get those kind of degrees, especially at those institutions. I've always found that engineers, like classically trained engineers that transfer to other career paths, take the level of engineering, like thought processes with them, and they start breaking problems down. Have you looked at the legal industry or any industry that lens of the engineer of how you can deconstruct it and rebuild?
Yeah, you're correct about that. Like our foundational training in engineering teaches you to solve problems, to have processes, to follow processes, to have checklists. Interestingly, in my first year at Ottawa, the law school dean said, we have few engineers who come to our program, and engineers always do well because they understand checklists, they understand processes, they understand solving problems, and that's really what law is about. It's about solving problems for your clients or solving problems at a bigger scale. And I didn't get it fully at that point, but I appreciate what he meant now. And so, in the same light, I think I always, because my foundational training is in engineering, I try to apply that in law as well, to think about when I'm working on every client file, but also broader than that in terms of the industry and how services can be provided. Where is the trend going? What is the real problem? What can be solved, and how can we solve it to better serve the clients and better serve society? So I'm always thinking outside the box, thinking of the bigger problem that I'm trying to solve. Even though as a lawyer, similar to doctors, as an entrepreneur and as an engineer, you're solving one big problem. But as a lawyer or as a doctor, you're solving thousands more problems because every client has a different problem. So I gotta be careful when I'm dealing with the client's problem. I'm dealing with that, but when I have my free time, I'm thinking about the bigger picture of what is the big problem here that I can solve to help all these clients. What is the common theme? What can be done to help everybody better, to provide the service better?
I mean, that's quite a suite of services you can get in a boutique firm, right? Like being able to get like a legal help from from a lawyer and get legal services, but also get the mind of an engineer to look at it. Also an MBA. Can we talk about some clients, some kind of work you've done with a few clients? Like what type of clients do you generally work with? At what level? What scale?
Yeah. So I should just point out that I became licensed just recently in October, and then I started my practice right away in November. So I'm really just 2-3 months into this.
Okay.
But I've been blessed, given my network and my reputation. I've been blessed with having clients, keeping me busy by calling. I get calls all the time. So the work that I'm primarily focusing on doing is the business and technology law for the startups and professionals. So what that means, I'm trying to be a one-stop shop to serve the entrepreneurs and professionals, but in the primary areas of law being business and technology law. So the work I have been doing is related to business law, technology law, and complementary or supplementary areas of law, such as some real estate, some wills, and some employment law, some business immigration. But I have not been doing any criminal law, personal injury law, for example, or immigration law in general. So that type of work, I've been able to leverage my network and refer to other lawyers. So in terms of the key specific type of work I've been doing in the last 3 months are helping startups to plan out how to get started in the initial stages. So whether it's a lot of incorporation work I have done, and all the planning in any agreement that's needed after the incorporation. So like, share, how are you going to distribute the shares? How are you going to plan for raising funds and what needs to be done? And how are you going to be ready to get your first customers? So any contract that's needed. How are you going to deal with hiring your first employees? What are the employment contracts and what are the things you need to be careful about? And then also when you're dealing with the renting spaces, all that lease agreements, what are the things you should be watching out for. So that type of advising, because a lot of entrepreneurs can do a lot of these incorporation work online themselves also, but what you get out of going to a lawyer is the strategy, the advice, to make sure you're doing the right thing so you don't have to do something on your own and then realize you made a mistake and then come back. So I have clients who are at that stage too, where they did things on their own and they realize that, I better get some advice before I go further, or I hit a roadblock here and I now need the help of a lawyer to kind of fix things up a little bit so they come back. So I deal with different stages where they're coming early or they're coming after the fact or a little bit later in the game, right?
Coming for damage control.
But damage control or after the damage and to a certain extent on how it can be fixed. But it's all interesting and different from a lawyer's point of view, and we try to help. And what I'm, one thing is that when you're coming out as a newly minted lawyer, if you're working as part of a firm, so I did have to do my articling training. So I worked under a couple of firms to get my articling training, which is mandatory. But even otherwise, if you work as part of a law firm for a few years, you get the benefit of having the ability to rely on other colleagues who are working in the firm to constantly get help from. But in my case, I wanted to start on my own, but I am blessed to have peers, other lawyers and mentors who are supporting me to deal with every client files that I have questions about. So it's still a nice setup, and I'm grateful to have those mentors and colleagues within the community and outside who have been very generous with their time and helping me.
Yeah, I mean, mentors are definitely instrumental in getting started up and moving forward, right? Can we talk a little about this incubator you're involved with CSI? I know Stan for a long time. I know he had plans to open up this incubator. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so Mosaic Lab is an incubator that I'm part of. So CSI is a company that I'm the chief operating officer. So CSI pretty much invested in a few startups, and they did it through Mosaic Lab, and we want to really take it to the next level to open it up for other startups to be part of it, and other investors and other mentors to come in and mentor. And the vision when it was started 3-4 years ago was to kind of be in this area where you have a lot of immigrants who are in this area and who don't have access to going to the downtown incubators, who it's very local and they're new to the country, or they're working on a new technology idea and they need the support. So that's why we wanted to be, the founders are, from Scarborough, the CSIs from Scarborough wanted to serve people from this area and surrounding areas with helping startups. But it was kind of put on hold for a little bit because of a large contract that the company received, which is how I was brought in to be the VP of projects to implement a new facility in the West Coast for a large client. So I implemented that, then was promoted as COO. And then because after that, I'm like, okay, you know what? And when I came onto the role, it was Mosaic Lab that actually got me to accept the role, because before I came here, I was the CEO of Arithmat, which was the parent company of Lancaster. So during that time, Stan was already talking to me, and he was talking a lot about the Mosaic Lab doing the incubator. So that's what I was interested in. I came in and to revive it, to take it to the next level. So now we're in the process, now that the BC project is done, we're slowly building up, and then COVID hit, but we're still moving forward to really mobilize resources. We're bringing on at the moment, we're revamping the website, which will be launched with tons of new advisors who will be advising on different capacities. And we're trying to have two approaches to this. So if you look at incubators, traditionally incubators, pretty much pick a few startups to incubate, and they'll provide all the resources to them, and sometimes they'll take a stake in it and so on, right? But with the Mosaic Lab, we're trying to do two-tier approach. So that is one part of it that we will continue to do, as we have already been doing. The other part is being like a one-stop shop where startups could come with whether it's legal service or financial advice or something they need where they would normally go to a lawyer or a financial advisor. They can come for one particular need, and we would, using our advisors network, we would provide that specific service, like a shop, basically, provide that specific service to the startup. So now all of a sudden we can cater to hundreds of startups because they don't have to be accepted through an intake process. They could just be coming in for one particular service. Hey, I'm facing this problem. So it's really a problem place for you to come to access resources. So I'm facing this small problem, whether it's on the HR side or on the legal side. Can somebody at Mosaic Lab help? So now we have a network of 25 or so advisors. So one of them will be able to help you with that. So you know what I mean? So rather than having this big commitment of having to be accepted and we can only serve a handful of starters, we can also have a two-tier approach where we are working closely with that handful that we have taken in, but it's also open for any other small business, because nowadays, if you look at it on Instagram and the LinkedIn, a lot of people are, whether it's full-time or on the side, they're having the courage and the interest to start a lot of small businesses. My wife is doing cakes right now, so that's a new hobby, and she's doing that as a side business. So it's nice to see that ecosystem of entrepreneurs coming up, and they may not have the resources to be part of an incubator if they have to go through the process of being taken in, but they may have a small problem that they can get help on, whether it's marketing, legal, and so on. So to be able to cater to those small businesses is the idea that the way I actually gave the suggestion that we should reposition it this way and stand approved. So we're kind of going forward in that way, so you can be more accessible to more people.
Yeah. So that's really cool that you're taking on this initiative, because Scarborough is really under-resourced when it comes to startup resources. Back when I was entrepreneur residence at the University of Toronto at Scarborough, the hub there was the only regional center for Scarborough, whereas downtown has a huge variety of services. York region has the oldest tech community in Canada. Durham is pumping a lot of capital into reinvigorating the township. So we were surrounded by all these startup services, and I found a lot of entrepreneurial folks from Scarborough, which is naturally full of immigrants and hustle-minded people. They were all going to exterior places to get support for their companies they were founding or working on. And a lot of people that I would talk to at incubators in different areas, they're from Scarborough. So there's definitely a need for this, and kudos to you guys for taking on this initiative.
Thank you.
Yeah, funny enough, I actually pitched Stan Muthulingam, the CEO of CSI, back in 2013, my first technology company. Yeah, so I brought him into the University of Toronto, where I was working on my first app project. It's like my third company, and it was one of my first time pitching people. And I was trying to explain to them this concept. I had no idea how technology worked at the time. I had a neuroscience degree. I had a sales background in career-wise. I was like 24 at the time, and I was trying to figure out how to make an app. Apps were pretty new. I just got on a smartphone only for a few years, and I wanted to build an app, right? And I found a really niche product. And I was trying to explain to him, this is what I want to do. And, there's so much lack of resources. One, even for startup help, there was so much lack of resources, right? There weren't even websites you can go and find materials on. Even legal help and stuff like that. There weren't resources back then. And I was blessed enough that I found that University of Toronto started this new center, the hub. And as legend goes I was apparently the first person to come knocking on that door, because I was looking for resources. I was actively looking for resources. And I came in there, and I was able to get, the space to actually work on my project. And that meant everything, because it gave you validation that your project means something, that there's an institution behind your stupid little idea, right? And you have the space to work on it. And I remember bringing Stan in, and he brought one of his friends who was a geospace specialist in GPS technology. Because I was telling him about I kind of gave him a briefing of it, and they both came down.
Nathan,
and I had Nathan. Yes, I haven't talked to him. Nathan. And I haven't talked to him in a while, but. Yeah, and together I had this whole pitch about how it's going to work. And and there was a complete disconnect, because I'm talking abstract thinking, and they're talking about like hardware, like how it's gonna work, what are the financials, what are the projections, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't know, right? And it opened up the floodgates to talk more about this and keep in touch. But one of the coolest things is like that came out of it. Like I got to talk to him. I talked to like Sriskandarajah from Newton, about the need for like more research for startups. Even though they end up funding my project or working on it. Right, the fit wasn't there. I'm like the appetite was definitely there, or the need for it was there. So it's really cool to see things come full circle, and now CSI, opening up this innovation center. It's really cool.
Exactly, and no, and Stan is very supportive of entrepreneurship, and that's his passion as well. So that's why this is what he wants to do next with his life and career and whatnot too, right? This is what he wants to focus on primarily. So it's nice to have people who have that appetite, as you said. And Nathan is also part of the Mosaic. So one of the companies you'll see on the website, MOB and SoftwareNet. So that's what Nathan's focusing on. So providing platforms for charities, providing platforms for real estate builders. So those are two main verticals that he's been focusing on after building a core engine that pretty much brought up his own programming language, and he's one of those tech geniuses who just develop cool stuff. So he built a whole new platform, whole new ecosystem, and building apps on top of that right now. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's going on, and Mosaic Lab already has a space that's allocated, including this boardroom. That lots of money has been spent into creating the space for entrepreneurs and startups to come and use as they need. So
amazing.
It's time to really put it to work, right? Because it's been already ready. The space has been allocated in Scarborough. It's a huge space, and it's
where is it located?
Birchmount and Ellesmere.
Birchmount, Ellesmere. Wow.
1410 Birchmount.
Okay.
So it's between Ellesmere and Lawrence on Birchmount. So it's right in Scarborough.
Yeah.
So it's accessible. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. So can you talk a little bit about the programming? I know you talked about it being like almost like a rolling a rolling cohort methodology, right? So a lot of incubators take on a set number of companies, each cohort, each year, or each like a semester program, and run through a program. Those are generally programs courses. Then there's like ideation level ones that just open up a space and allow you to work. That's what the hub was.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little about the programming?
So one is the traditional incubator model, where we take in a small number of companies that we wish to help to grow significantly and invest in as well, right? The other one, you're just really accessing our services as you need anything. So it's almost like going to like walk-in customers kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're a walk-in customer essentially, where you're coming and saying, hey, I got this problem, I just need help from somebody, and we're here to help. That's what it is. That's really the model. So there's no formal programs per se, but if you're a startup and you got a problem you need help with, you just come in and we connect you with one of our advisors to help you out. Simple as that. What problem you're dealing with that you need help, we help you with it. That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
So there's no formal training. That may be part of it based on your need, but nowadays people have limited time and limited very specific needs. So we're trying to target to help with those specific needs rather than put through a structured program and impose that on everybody.
Yeah.
It's there if you need it, but it depends. It's catered to the individual's needs, right?
Yeah, I mean those boutique services are really, really important especially for early stage companies. Is there any cases that you can talk about? Any particular companies that have gone through that you work with yet?
So you can see like on the website already, on Mosaic Lab website, some of the companies that are going through it. Mm-hmm. Some of them are reaching some significant milestones, but I obviously can't talk about it. But if you look into them and you go on their website, you will see some of the significant milestones they're reaching at the moment.
Perfect.
So I'll kind of leave it at that.
Yeah.
And for you to kind of and let the audience kind of do their digging and research.
Yeah.
So, but it isn't, it's still a very few startups, very few companies, right?
Yeah.
So this is still an early stage, I would say. It's been, we've been informally, CSI has been informally investing and supporting these startups for a few years. In the case of Nathan, that's been almost a decade in supporting. Another company called WeTrack, you can look into. is reaching some significant milestones right now, and that's been a few years as well. So you can see there's some traction that's happening, but again, small number of companies, but meaningful support, meaningful contributions, and now we're trying to open it up where you can be enrolled as a part of a structured program, or you can be just accessing us for whatever specific problem you're facing. And I think that's a more accessible model. So then you can now help hundreds of startups. And the same way I'm helping on the legal side, right? I have startups who are at the very early stage who are calling me and saying, I'm faced with this problem. So I'm giving them advice on the business and legal side of what they can do. And it's not, I'm not doing this just to, clarify, like I'm not doing this for the money only. Obviously I got to pay my bills. I have, this is my career, but it's not always very lucrative too, right? Because startups are struggling and they bootstrap, so they don't have enough resources. But I'm committed to growing with them. I get joy out of helping because this is my area of interest, right? This is my hobby and passion. So you grow with them, and then when they reach significant milestones, they'll have significant work, hopefully, that I can be part of and helping them out with, right? But I get joy out of doing this, and that's why I'm doing this versus taking on a traditional corporate law route where, it could have been more lucrative, but I came into law to do this essentially.
Yeah.
So I'm doing what I'm passionate about, and I'm happy to do it.
That's great.
A lot of work, a lot of time, but, and I have a supportive wife, so I get to do it.
Of course.
Even though it doesn't necessarily pay that well to do what I do, right?
Yeah. No, that's admirable, right? Like being really being really passionate about what you do, I think, is one of the testaments of life, right? Being able to enjoy what you're doing and knowing that your services have value, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah. So you're starting a lot of different things at the same time. It looks like that's a pattern in your life. Going from the multiple degrees now to the multiple initiatives. You have this incubator. You have your own boutique law firm. Anything else you're involved with?
I think that's already a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. Okay.
That's already a lot of projects to be involved in.
Yeah.
But so my law practice, the CSI work, the Mosaic Lab, Mosaic Ventures. And besides that, the only other work is like thinking about the legal tech startups in terms of what are the problems I can solve by providing software or platforms for lawyers and consumers in the legal industry. Yeah. So that's the other big one that I'm spending time thinking, but I'm not in a rush. Like all of these things, it's not that I sit there and plan this is how I'm going to go. And I just go with the flow, but I just work hard. I work a lot. And I do what I enjoy doing. I do have a life outside as well. Like, I had 2 young children, so I spend weekends. Weekends I try to avoid working. I spend time hiking every weekend, taking photos. So I do have a balanced life in that sense. But weekdays I work. I start my day very early, 5 a.m., and I work late. So it's having that discipline, and you just do what you enjoy doing. So these are the projects I have on the go, but I don't really go. I do some investments as well, and obviously, as many people are doing, whether it's on the startup side or in the stocks and things like that. But that's very, not that much. My main focus is still on the entrepreneurship side of things, and really all it is for me is I'm always grateful for the opportunities we have. Right? I didn't plan to be in this. I didn't plan to be a lawyer. But I'm just grateful for, despite the challenges and obstacles I faced in life. We're in Canada where we're given the opportunities to do whatever you want. You could either choose to be, just enjoying life and not being productive, or you can be productive and enjoying life too. And I'm always grateful for what I have: the education, the work, the family, the mentors, the support, and I want to make the best out of it. I want to be productive. So, and that changes as time goes. I keep my mind all open. I always work hard and I keep my mind open.
Yeah.
So 6 months, if you talk to me again, I may have a project that I'm working on.
No doubt.
I'm a project manager.
No doubt.
Unfortunately, that's how I'm built.
Yeah. It's engineer in you.
Engineer, but also when I did the engineering, most of my work, I worked at Microsoft as a project manager. I worked at BlackBerry as a project manager. So even as a subset within engineering, I was trained as a project manager. So I'm always good at juggling different projects and getting things done. I'm a driven person. Who just juggle different things and get done somehow and lose a lot of hair in the process.
Yeah, I mean, we're part of the same club. Don't worry, the entrepreneurship club. But
Yeah.
so you mentioned legal tech, and I think that's something I really want to touch on. Legal tech
Yep.
is such an interesting subset of technologies because the legal industry um, is by nature really rigid, right? It's very rare to, like it really changes, and it's built on like older infrastructure, and it's built that way. A lot of bureaucracy,
Yep.
but we're fortunate to be very in touch with the legal innovation zone at Ryerson, and a few companies.
Okay, that's very nice.
Yeah, the few companies have come through there, and it's a real pleasure to talk to a lot of them legal professionals who are now having their own
Yep.
startups in a very niche category of the legal industry. They found some place where they can automate or apply some technology to change things. So one of the first ones we had was Sean Bernstein from Minute Books. So they're looking to
Okay. Yep.
digitize and change the minute books that corporations keep, especially large enterprises, especially law firms. And that was really interesting to see how you would take such a challenge and automate that. Recently, we had a guy. We had an Anatoly from Pact. So Pact was
Okay.
trying to make a. They're trying to make a messenger service
Yep.
for that has contracts in it. So you can talk like like WhatsApp. You can have message back and forth between a client or a person, and all those messages can be tuned into a contract. Can be brought back into a contract. Can be sourced. And once the contract is agreed upon and signed, all the backlogs are there. And more importantly, once the agreement is there, you can actually download as like a file, as like an actionable file, the full record of that can be used in legal proceedings if needed. Right. So
Okay.
those are like cool, really cool innovations. And outside of that, I mean, there was another individual we talked to, not on air, but I had a chance to talk to from the UK. He was a law student,
Mm-hmm.
and what he discovered was that in fighting fighting traffic tickets, a lot of the same arguments are used over and over again. So when you hire a paralegal, when you hire a lawyer, they're using a very almost like a template process of fighting a particular tickets. And he took that and he built an automation system so that people can scan their tickets, and it'll scan the ticket and it'll tell you based off of what happened, like, what is the template of how you yourself can go to court and argue your case based off the knowledge of legal professionals, right? And he's kind of democratized legal knowledge in that way. And his like,
Okay. Yeah.
and that startup, like he built that during in law school, and within 3-4 years, it sold for about $6 million, right? And he sold to a larger
Wow.
firm and he moved on. And he came back to Toronto, and he's moving on to different ventures. So so legal industry definitely is ripe for disruption. What are you seeing in it? What's interesting for you?
Yeah. So as you say, legal innovation zone is a great place to be. I plan to be more connected and more active in that. My articling principal, Monica Goyal, was one of the mentors there, and she herself was involved in a legal tech startup as well for my legal briefcase that just got acquired by a bigger company, Caravel Law, recently in the last few months. So
Yeah.
she's now part of this bigger firm that acquired her legal tech company. So, and I'm aware of different people she was actually teaching a legal tech course at Osgood, and I took that too. So I'm very connected with the different projects, the different initiatives that legal tech in the legal tech space in Ontario, particularly. But still, this is still. I wanted to do my own law practice to be able to really get my hands and feet, wet and really understand what are the gaps, right? But from my understanding so far, it is ripe for disruption, as you say, because the consumers are becoming more and more sophisticated, and they are open to doing uh, lot of self-serve. They're comfortable using a lot of self-serve tools, right?
Mm.
But they still would like to have the benefit of getting the legal advice from the lawyer in some cases, or in many cases they come to that at a later stage, or they want to minimize that and they want to do more things on their own. But the regulations are there for a reason, where legal advice can be provided only by lawyers within Ontario, and that's we're regulated by the Law Society, right? For a reason, right? But there's legal information that can be provided, and so a lot of these platforms, there's a limit in terms of what they can do. They can provide tools for lawyers. They can provide tools to make it easier for individuals. They can have platform for a lot of self-help things, services, but it still cannot be considered as, none of these platforms can really say that they're providing legal services because only the lawyers can do that. But with time, we don't know how things are going to shift and how regulations could change. But at least within that context, there's a lot of disruption that could be done further in terms of what additional services can be available to the consumers, where they can do it on their own. Like incorporations can be done by yourself without getting the legal advice. If you're comfortable doing it yourself, you can do that. You can download all sorts of contracts and agreements and customize it yourself, right? But so a lot of people, that's all they can afford to pay for and do. Whereas if they went to the lawyer, they got to pay for the legal service, they got to pay for their consultation, right, for legal advice as well. But I think there could be hybrid models where there could be more platforms online to enable more information, more legal information to educate the public about what they can do, how things work. Like you can have tons of legal information and platforms can do a better job and tools can do a better job of educating the public. So enabling them to do more things on their own without necessarily coming to the lawyers for everything, or paralegal, because there's some services that paralegals can also provide, and that's also regulated by the Law Society, and there's specific things that you can go to them for help, but there's a lot you can do on your own if you're comfortable, right? So more public education is needed so that to enable people to do things on their own, whether it's entrepreneurs or the general public. So I think more and more of that will happen, where people, just like learning from YouTube and so on, they can be learning different skills to do things on their own. And I think lawyers can become more specialized in terms of providing specific services. So we call that in legal term in the law, we call it unbundling of services. So rather than retaining to do everything, we can provide specific things. So this is like something that I'm interested in exploring the space in terms of, for example, wouldn't it be cool where a lot of people are already kind of doing that. They're reaching out to me saying, hey, you know what, I already customized the template and I have an agreement in place. I just need you to review that and give me your comments on whether I'm doing the right thing. So now you don't have to hire me to draft the whole thing. You went ahead and did something on your own. You're going to come to me to review that, and I can have a network of lawyers to do that, maybe, right? And we can help with that specific need. So our time is better utilized, and you can be learning things on your own. But sometimes we may be having to tell you that, hey, you did this whole thing wrong. There's all these issues that maybe you should let us do it or go try again, right? But it's empowering or enabling the consumers to do things on their own, and lawyers taking a very specific work by unbundling the whole thing rather than being retained to do everything from A to Z. For people who can afford it or people who are comfortable doing that, the lawyers will can continue to do that. But for others who are more go-getters and they want to do things on their own and then come to the lawyers for specific needs, so that kind of hybrid model will pop up more and more, I think, where we become even more specialized in what services we provide. But tools, as some of the examples you mentioned are tools for minute books and so on. There's tons of tools that can be developed. Right now, it's a few large corporations that are kind of dominating the tools and platforms. Even I worked on before, I think this is before I had the idea of going to law school. I worked on building a platform that focused on the sales and marketing needs, like building converting the leads to, CRM, to a customer relationship management tool specifically for the legal industry. This is 9 years ago, but right around the time I was thinking about law school, 9-10 years ago. So, that kind of tools could even be useful even today, because there aren't too many options for the legal industry to do the CRM piece of it, or the matters management, or even the communication part. One of the other, like communicating with the clients, or the clients to engage and log in and see, giving them apps and portals to view what's happening with their file, being more transparent. And that's what I'm really interested in. If you see my practice, if you go to Suresh Law already, my practice is already embracing a lot of technology. Everything from the intake process, you have to do a lot of work yourself. You log in and you fill out the form for the intake form, so that I don't need to have a staff to take care of, asking you those questions, to type it in. So that keeps the cost down for you as well. I don't have an office. A lot of people, first question is like, where's your office? I don't have an office. I don't need an office right now. If I need one later, I'll get it. But this is helping me to keep the cost down, and I'm able to get the work done still. And we can meet over chat and tell me what your problem is and how I can help you, and I work on it. But if I have more overheads of having a lot of staff, a lot of big office space, then I have to charge that back to the client in one way or another, right?
Yep.
So I'm keeping the cost down by leveraging this. Is COVID is helping with this, right? We are somehow forced to work remotely for in many sectors, and we are adapting to that. So even I think the legal industry is ripe for disruption even there, that you don't necessarily need to go to a lawyer's office all the time. You can be doing things remotely, letting the lawyers do what they do best, which is to do the work, right? Sometimes having the office could be a distraction too, where you constantly have people coming in and you don't get enough time to work. This way you can meet remotely and you get the work and you can focus on getting things done. So I think even the delivery of the legal service is ripe for disruption, partially because of COVID, right? And people are going to get used to that and be more productive in some sense, right? So that's why, but when people ask me almost every phone call I get, where's your office? I have to answer the question. I don't have one, but it's helping me keep your costs down.
Yeah.
But I think soon that's the model people are going to turn to, where it's going to be a lot of remote work, and that will help people be more productive. So there's tools in, so the moment we're going to do remote work more, even for lawyers, tons of tools can be introduced to facilitate that process better, right? The communication with the clients, the engagement with the clients, the work you do, the transparency in billing. So if I'm retaining you, well, the clients also struggle sometimes to understand why I have an intake form. Well, that's compliance. We are regulated profession, so we need to do the client intake properly. We need identification. So all of this, we need to educate the public that that's the process that lawyers have to follow, but we can build forms and tools to make it easier to educate the public about that, right? So there's tons of tools, and clients are interested when they sign the retainer of how their money is being spent, what is the estimate for the work that's being quoted. All of that, there's tools that can be built to make it more open and transparent. So with technology, I'm already using a little bit, but I think I have a long way to go in embracing technology into my practice. But that's at my core. Like for me, I'd rather take longer, but I want to make sure I embrace technology in the way I provide the legal services, because I am this is a pilot project. Suresh Law is a pilot project of how technology can be embraced to provide legal services to people that's more affordable, more transparent, right? And whatever I figure out here, I want to push that off as different solutions for other lawyers and to change the whole industry, to make it for society to benefit from it. And that's why my mission, I put a post today on social media that says I'm on a social mission to serve the underrepresented communities, particularly the entrepreneurs, like with the special focus on entrepreneurs, right? So who have limited resources, who have tons of ideas, who are trying to disrupt various industries. So I want to help them get there. And that's with the use of technology, right? So the same can be done in the legal industry by leveraging technology. And I'm using my own law firm as a pilot project, essentially.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's very admirable, because it's so necessary. The unbundling of services, I think, is really interesting, and what technology allows us to do. But unbundling of services into more like specialized services, more ad hoc, more boutique services, I think that can do a lot to revolutionize industry, especially when it comes to startups, right? Like for entrepreneurs, you're so strappy when you're starting a new thing. Like you're so cash strapped. You're trying to manage your burn rates that legal sometimes takes a back seat. And that can be very unfortunate. There's so many people who's lost out, lost fortunes, lost their livelihoods, lost their companies and business just because they weren't properly protected. What happens if tomorrow you get hit by a bus? What happens to your company? What happens to your shares? How does your partners get access to things, or your spouse, right? Like all these things have to be taken into account on top of what happens during a deal and how to move forward. And so I particularly I'm really interested in seeing how you pull through with this, because I personally went through this, right? So back in 2013, when I tried to launch my tech product, I remember being completely bewildered how to launch and run a startup, because one of the experiences I've had was, I pitched at the National Business and Technology Conference. At the time, that was Canada's biggest technology conference, and I remember I bombed that. That was like my first like actual pitch, and I didn't even place. Like, I got kicked out the first round. But it was an amazing experience. Here I was on a stage, with this huge screen behind me, displaying my presentation in a room full of 300 people. Most of them were like investors and senior people, and failing there really ignited me. But one of the really cool things is I walked off stage knowing I bombed. Like I was horrible, and I walked off stage and I was approached by two lawyers from two different firms. One of them was Canada's oldest firms. It's over 100 years old. At the time, it was called Ard and something else. Now the company's new partners are there, Ard and McBurney. And one of the lawyers approached me and says like, "Hey, great job up there. Your product sounds interesting. Love to talk to you more about this." And then immediately right after, another lawyer came, and this was a lawyer from Labarge and Weinstein, which is a technology-focused firm who has offices all across Canada. And they're like, "Hey, great job up there. Cool concept. Love to talk to you." And both of them were offered like a $10,000 package in legal services. And for me, I was like flabbergasted. I'm like, here I was, like first time as a tech entrepreneur, completely bombed my first pitch competition, still only in concept, didn't have an app, didn't have any hard substance. And these two massive firms were like offering services to me. And, at 10,000 sounds like a great bulk, but I ended up going with Labarge and Weinstein, for various reasons. I ended up choosing them, but those services got eaten up really quickly. Like within a few months, I was actually able to attract my first investor. What's it? Ratheesan from Libera Group, actually, right? I was able to.
That's my former boss too. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I remember. So I just remember.
I was an advisor. Yeah, I was an advisor to Ratheesan. He's the former CEO of Libera. So very good man, and he's also big on entrepreneurship and supporting entrepreneurship. So
absolutely. I mean, what a guy! Like I remember being at the Hilton at a convention room at a random event. I don't remember why I was there. I think my parents dragged me to it, and I was on my phone, kind of like in and out. And he came up for the keynote presentation, and he started talking, and he just gripped my attention. The way he just like talked about his story and development was just so different from what I'm used to hearing from minority leaders, and the way he talked about community and supporting other people. But really enjoyed his story of how he built this company. And the moment he walked off stage, I just ran up and just shook his hand. Like he was actually heading for the door, then I cut him off. Right, came around the corner, cut him off, and I love this story because what I didn't plan for this. This is after a series of failed pitches, both in competitions and to other investors. Really, when Toronto's tech scene was still really new, and he was this Tamil billionaire, of a $1 billion company from the Europe here doing a presentation, and he's heading out for the door. And I cut him off, come in, and I went to shake his hand. And I shook his hand. I'm like, "Hey, sir, that was a great speech." Shook his hand. I didn't let go. I came in closer, and like other people were trying to talk to him, and I kind of like used like my body like nudge people away, getting closer, and I kind of gave him like a 60-second pitch, like the classical training at the time kicked in from the hub, the innovation center, and I gave him this pitch, and he is like pulled back, and he's like, he just looked like that's interesting. It's like I'm staying at I'm staying at the penthouse suite. Talk to my assistant, set up a time. Let's talk tomorrow, right? And he pulled his assistant, and he's like, and he get him to me, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And booked a time for the next day at 1 o'clock. 11 o'clock. And I remember this because what I did immediately was when I booked a room in the Hilton. Right? I'm like, he's here. I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna be close to the action. Luckily, had all my laptop and all my stuff in the car. Moved into the room and started working on my pitch and all that. Stayed up all night. And around 5 a.m., I came downstairs in the lobby, just kicking it, and like 6 a.m. and he was having a private meeting, and I was able to like sneak into the meeting and hear him talk. Okay. And the cool thing he did was like right after his like presentation, he was talking to a whole bunch of like senior leaders in the community. He's like, he pointed out to me, he saw me in the background. He's like, I'm talking to that young guy. soon about his company and about possibly investing. And suddenly, all these other senior leaders are like, "Oh, what's your company? What are you working on? Can we come in on this?" So that was really cool. But like, that pitch ended up going really interesting. He committed, like, like an angel round to the company. Funny enough, me and Travis and the guys from Menu, we pitched like right next to each other, like, one after another. So in the lobby, we're like waiting to go up, and like all the other entrepreneurs came up. Travis Ratnam, he came on. Knowledge Hook just raised like $20 million, right? A Series A. A Menu went off in a different direction, but all these were like different, like early stage tech companies at the time, and we all went at one another. And he committed to this, but immediately after that, what I needed was, holy shit, like, when he said yes, like, to the, I was so unprepared. I was so prepared on the pitch, on presenting the idea, like, what do you do after? How do you structure a deal? Like, what does the agreements go in place? Like, how do I protect myself? How do I make sure, like everything is good? Here, he wants to help people, but end of the day, he has a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure behind him. How do I, at 24 at the time, how do I compete? So luckily, my ace was, LeBarge and Weinstein with their $10,000 package, right? That I just got like a few months before. That all those services, that entire package just went up just to like triage this round, right? And that just put me in perspective. That's pretty, like, that the 10,000. If they didn't give me like they actually if they didn't give me like a pay forward method, like, we're gonna give you these services and you pay us back after, right? When you have capital, like when you become revenue positive. That was the package they offered me. That was really cool, and but I'm like, if I didn't have that, easily $10,000 could have just gone into just like, 1/3 of what I would raised from Vidhisan would have just gone right into legal services. And it always stuck with me. I'm like, oh my God, legal is so expensive. How can I navigate this? And even within that field, like, I had to take a pause from even the building of my company to go and educate myself on, just like the nuances of contracts and knowing the different terminologies. And one of the things I learned that I had to go out of my way to learn, right, was like something called the right of first refusal, right? So as an investor, the right of first refusal is a very powerful term, and it's just like a one line in like a multi-page document. And with that power, it gives investors the ability to liquidate preferences, right, higher than subsequent investors, and they can like choose liquidate, or like say no, or control what happens to their shares before with priority. And that always stuck out to me. And in the years that followed, whenever I talked to startups and stuff, I always brought up that term. We're working at the innovation center at the hub. It's a very early stage innovation center. After I graduated from the center for my company, they brought me back as an entrepreneur residence. I ended up staying there for about 7 years. First with my company for the first 3 years, and 3.5 years after that as an advisor. And I always brought that term up. That this term I learned, that just like a magical sentence within this lengthy project that gives a lot of power if you know how to, if it's utilized correctly. So, the idea of like legal knowledge and knowing it, you can't just depend just on a lawyer or services. You need to know a little bit of a framework yourself to know what you ask for, to know what's been given, right? And to be expected to be taught, by your legal advisor or by your lawyer is, it's billable hours, right? So knowing at least the foundations of legal knowledge, it's so important for every entrepreneur. So I completely agree with you on like, democratizing that and making that easier is definitely important.
Exactly, because that also will enable people to appreciate how complex the work that lawyers do is, because sometimes people can also underestimate until they have a problem that, hey, the contract, I can just use a template, but you got to know what you're signing, what are the words you're putting in there, what are the terms you're putting in there, because it will matter in some cases, right? So so when you're trying to learn it yourself and getting more familiar, you'll appreciate the vast knowledge that lawyers have. And knowledge is powerful, so everybody is entitled to try to learn as much as they're comfortable learning. But and you will appreciate the time when you're taking them from the lawyer, because sometimes people expect the time for free too. That this is what we do. So everybody has a profession and they have a specialization, and you have to respect that there's a fee to pay for that service, right? There's a value you're getting for that service, so you have to pay for that accordingly as well, right? So, but you can try to learn a lot on your own, so you can better make use of your resources that you have to. So you go to the lawyers for the things that you really need. The rest you can try to do yourself, or you manage accordingly, right? But to try to go and expect to be taught by the lawyers for free is also not reasonable. There's give and take, right? In terms of some you have to do yourself, some you can go to the lawyers to get the assistance from.
Yeah.
But Radhishan, yeah, that story, that's an amazing story. Very similar to how I met him. Same Hilton, I met him, and he hired me on the spot to be. At that time, I was trying to do my law school. I was trying to start. I didn't even start the law school, so I told him I want to do law for this reason. He's like, okay, can you move to London, UK? I said, nope, I got to do law school here. He's like, okay, well, you can be my advisor and help to find tech companies to invest in and help them grow. So Knowledge Hub was actually the first project that I worked on.
Amazing.
For Radhishan. From there I went on to Lankasri to be their CEO, to help with an exit strategy for them. And that also was completed. But Radhishan is an amazing person. I'm always very grateful for Stan for giving me opportunities here. And at that time, Stan also offered me the same opportunity here, and Radhishan gave me that opportunity on the spot to be, to work remotely and advise. And people who take the chance to give you the opportunity, you have to appreciate it, right? And that's why I say, when you look at my past, I'm always grateful for all the support and for people who believe in me, who gave me opportunities. And I didn't do any of this alone. It's the family, it's the community, it's the people who believe in you, and people don't have those opportunities in some parts of the world, right? Like where we were born, and if given the context of how things were in Sri Lanka where I was born, maybe we wouldn't have these opportunities, right? So you always have to be grateful for what you have and make the best out of it, so that other people will also benefit from what you do, what you contribute. It's a collective effort, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what keeps me going. It's when others believe me to give me every opportunity that I have. It fuels me to keep going, because I feel the best way to give back and to show my gratitude is by making the best use of all the skills and experience that I have, so that I can be of assistance to others, right? So, it's a team effort, right? We help each other to build society, right?
Yeah. I think what's really pivotal is, especially being a minority, having other minority leaders support you. It's different. It's very meaningful. Right. So especially that's why I'm so thankful people like Radhishan for even Stan, right? Just being a pillar of the community to support others and provide that structure. Because it's validation, right? Especially when you're young and scrappy and trying to come up and do something new, to have somebody reach down and support you and help pull you up, that means everything.
Yeah.
Right. And
exactly. Yeah.
And the next thing is to pay it forward, right? Pay it forward to the next generation, to the next youth, and the people coming up.
Yeah, and it's beyond to even this morning I posted that post about me, my vision of helping, my mission of helping, the social mission of helping the underrepresented communities. And Alan Query, who's the chair, who runs a successful communications company in Waterloo, he shared that, and he said, this is a great man. And then my former NBA laureate director, Hugh Munro, he also posted, he made a comment, I think, on LinkedIn or Facebook, saying you'll get the full value out of Suresh. It's great to have these ongoing support, because it's positive. Positive energy helps you keep going, because it's not always easy. It's not easy to juggle this many things. It's not easy to wake up every morning and work this hard. Sometimes you do feel down, and when other people believe in you, other people continue to give you the support, that keeps you going. Right? I really believe that that's one of the reasons why I keep going, because I'm blessed with the support of others, and I try to do the same by inspiring others. That it's not just about getting 4 degrees, but it's I don't think, I didn't plan that, and I don't think that's the whole picture. I think it's just about being productive, focusing, working hard, being the best you can while living a life. People like Radhishan and Stan, learning from them on how to be humble, even when you have a lot of resources, how to give back and how to be humble, how to invest in other entrepreneurs. These are things that you learn from others. So I hope through the work I do, whether it's my children or others, to also see how I'm productive and how I'm giving, how I'm contributing and the type of life I'm leading, the values I hold. So you try to inspire others to also be productive. That's it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And one of the things I love about our industry, the innovation industry, is that how close knit it is. Like people just want to support. Like if you're working on novel things, like cool things, working on great ideas, people talk and the people support. If it's just as simple as sharing a post or just connecting with you, everyone's so much more willing to talk. And having worked in so many different industries myself, with the sales career, like the innovation industry is very different in that it's like everyone is trying to solve really challenging problems, and they feel the pain of that, they feel the weight of it, and so it's like a mutual respect, right? The mutual respect definitely hangs the field, and if you, as long as you perform and do well, their support will always be there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Suresh, this has been great. Thank you for joining me on the show. This has been a really insightful episode. Stick around. We'll do a quick debrief. But for everyone who's listening in, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, and I really enjoyed a lot speaking and learning a lot from you through in this session. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for reaching out to me and asking me to be part of this. And I really hope the audience also gained something. And feel free to, reach out if you need any assistance or any legal service or any ideas you want to bounce off. I'll be happy to be helping in any way I can.
Yeah. How can people reach you? What's the best way?
So my website, so suresh.law, is my legal service, my law website. You can go there and reach out if you need legal service. You can book a consultation. There's a client intake form as well, or I'm on most of the social medias. LinkedIn is the preferred one, like LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, but preferably on LinkedIn you can send messages. But my email is also suresh@suresh.law if you want to get in touch with me.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.